how good are you at receiving mercy? I was with a group of students recently and I asked them, what do you think's harder, forgiving yourself or forgiving others? And without hesitation, every one of them said, forgiving myself. And I think that that's the case for a lot of people. I think a lot of people in the world really struggle with forgiving themselves, especially students, right? If you're a student, you know that every day it seems like you're constantly being put to the test. You're constantly having to measure up with those around you. And as a result, you're constantly being faced with your failures. You're constantly being faced with not being able to measure up or not being able to be perfect, which is kind of all a student wants to do, is they just want to get the perfect grade, the perfect paper, the perfect application. And so it involves having to forgive yourself. And so I think students really struggle with that process. But there's something about being a student that can serve, I think, as a great model of mercy and a great model for forgiving ourselves, which is spring break. Spring break is this interesting cultural phenomenon, right? It's like this thing that schools, institutions, society gives to students that says, we're going to give you a week off. We know school can be grueling. We know work can pile up. And so we're going to give you a whole week in the middle of the semester just to catch up on sleep, to get refreshed. So that way you can finish out the semester and feel a little less pressure. And I think that's kind of what spring break says to students, and it says to all of us. It says, give yourself a break. It's this amazing act of mercy. An amazing act of mercy that says, give yourself a break. You could take one. And I think we can learn a lot from that. I think students can learn a lot from that, right? Last Sunday we had the reading from the gospel where it was the woman who's caught in adultery. And, as you know, the story is that she's brought forth to be stoned, and Jesus says, hey, anyone who hasn't sinned, go ahead and throw the first stone. And of course, nobody can. And then it's just left with Jesus and this woman. And the part that's not in the scripture that I think is most interesting is how that woman felt when Jesus said, I don't condemn you either. Now go forth and sin no more. What she's left with is really the dilemma of, can I accept Jesus' mercy? Can I accept this man's mercy? Everybody knows what I've done, which is embarrassing. It's public now that I've done this act of adultery. Can I accept that I'm still lovable? I think we struggle with that. I think that's why forgiving ourselves can be so difficult, especially if our sin, if our mistake has gotten out, right? Because then we're embarrassed about it. And so then it's like, can I forgive myself for this embarrassment that I've caused myself, that everybody knows about? I think the difference between Peter and Judas, both of them betrayed Jesus. They both betrayed Jesus basically on the same day. But their fates were so different, right? And I think the difference between Jesus and Judas Peter and Judas was that Peter turned back to Jesus and he said, I'm going to open myself up to receive Jesus' mercy. I'm going to ask for forgiveness, and I'm going to trust that Jesus can forgive me. Whereas Judas turned to despair. He committed this sin, and he hurt Jesus, and then he couldn't forgive himself. He couldn't forgive himself, and what happened? He went off in despair, and then he killed himself. And I think what we see in that story is how important it is for us to be merciful with ourselves. To, as spring break says, give ourselves a break, right? I think Peter gave himself a break. He said, yeah, man, I really messed up, but I'm going to give myself a break. And I'm going to go back to Jesus and ask for forgiveness. And I'm going to be merciful with myself so that I can receive Jesus' love. During this Lent, and as we get prepared for Holy Week next week, I think that's exactly what we're called to do, especially with spring break just happening, right? For those of you who are students out there, let spring break kind of teach you a lesson. And the lesson is, take a break. Give yourself a break. Be merciful to yourself so that Jesus can be merciful to you.